Hello and welcome to this episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddy-Wilcox and today I'm going solo. This is the episode where we bring together the last 9 episodes and all of the things that our fantastic 3 guests have shared with us: wisdom, curiosity, purpose, leadership, all sorts of things. And you get to decide what's resonated with you most as I share some of the things that have resonated most for me. So I'm really looking forward to sharing this with you, and I'll see you on the other side. Welcome to today's episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddy-Wilcox, and I'm delighted to join you all for the What Resonates With You episode that we do every 10th. Looking back at the last 9 episodes and the last 3 fantastic guests that we've been privileged enough to have on the show, sharing their leadership insights with us to help all of you as our listeners to develop your leadership, grow and shine and be able to show up as the best version of your leadership self. So, gosh, we've got all sorts for you today. And just to say, I'm taking a bit of a risk today because I've got the door open whilst I'm recording this. The house windows are all open because it's really warm, and the dog keeps hearing stuff and barking randomly. Daughter's home but still in bed. You know what teenagers are like. So at any moment we could have a little interruption. But equally, we may get through the whole show and nothing happens. So just as you know, we kind of roll with whatever happens in the show. We've had all sorts of things going on. Husbands popping in with coffee, dogs barking, doorbells going, partners coming in to say hello, not realising recordings going on. So you name it, we've had it on the show and we just keep going. It's all about the wonderful discussions. But today you've got me on my own sharing what we have chatted through with our fantastic guests in the last 9 weeks. And it just goes by so fast. In the blink of an eye, I'm recording the next episode 10, if you like, out of each sort of chunk of recordings of the podcast. And it just seems like yesterday that we were celebrating episode 50, halfway to our centenary episode, which will be an amazing milestone and will happen well before our 2-year mark in the podcast. So that's something to look forward to, of course. So we've got lots of themes because we talked about so much fascinating leadership material in the last 9 weeks. With Tom Willis, Nathalie May and Becky Field. Now, all from very different backgrounds and walks of life, and sharing some quite different themes, or discussions rather, and coming at things from very different perspectives. However, there really were some themes that came across from all 3 of those wonderful guests. Things like the sort of the trust piece, the softer skills, that we talk about in leadership, being able to look after ourselves and take care of ourselves, but also those around us, developing others. All 3 of our guests touched on some of those at some point, and certainly 2 of them on each of those in any of their episodes. So it's been really interesting to see that no matter what you're chatting about, some of these really strong leadership themes really do come in to the frame and are things for you to consider. So if I think about the first one that really sort of came through loud and clear with Tom when we were chatting through his episodes was around workplace culture. Now, I've been in some workplace cultures, if you like, or workplaces where the culture has been really toxic, really unpleasant. What does toxic mean? It's going to be something different, I guess, to all of us. But for me, it sort of comes to mind. Lots of words come to mind. I think about things like unfriendly, unsafe. Unsafe's a big one. I've talked about psychological safety a fair bit before. This really does come into it. If you feel unsafe to speak up with your ideas, what you're feeling, what you're thinking, how you could contribute to a problem that the team or the organisation is facing, but you don't feel safe to do so because of potential consequences, as in people will think you're stupid, people will be rude about your idea, people will dismiss you, people will take your idea and use it as their own. Sadly, over the years, but the good news is I've been in the workplace for many years. So actually started working when I was 14. So a lot of years to compare all sorts of different experiences. I have come across all of those things. And I guess the one that's most difficult to handle, or has been difficult to handle for me on occasion, is when somebody takes your idea and runs with it as if it's their own. And the reason I say that, difficult, not as in I'm the one that wants to be there having everybody thank me for a fantastic idea. It's not about that. It's about the audacity that somebody has to take your idea and run with it as their own. I could never do that. I'm always the one that is bigging up the other person and saying, guess what? One of my team came up with this amazing idea, and now we're all working together to make it amazing and work for the team. And that's how it's presented to anybody above. To me, that's a no-brainer, but sadly, not everybody thinks that way. So this is the kinds of things I've experienced, say, in what I would call a toxic culture. Nobody's looking out for each other. It's all about perhaps the targets, the KPIs, what have you, the profit at the end of the day, and not about the people in the organisation. This may sound cliche, but people within the organisation are the organisation's most important asset. I cannot stress that enough. If they're not engaged, they don't feel safe, they're not getting appropriately compensated for what they're doing, whether that be a thank you, whether that be salary, whether that be benefits, whatever else, whether that be the team that they work within and the friendships and the sort of working relationships that they build. It can be all sorts of things. It's not okay to operate in an environment which we kind of headline as toxic. So that culture is really, really important. And as leaders, we all have a role to play in creating that space, that culture for people to operate at their best. And I say this quite often, let's put our rose-tinted specs on for a minute and imagine what's possible in that team, in that organisation, where everybody feels safe to speak up, they feel safe to try things, it doesn't work, learn from it and try again. They can take a moment because they feel that they can take their break to look after themselves and have their lunch and have those sort of, as we call them, water cooler or coffee break chats in the kitchen when we're together, or if we're working online, to call a colleague and just have a bounce an idea for a minute with a coffee. If everybody felt safe to do all those things, and so much more, of course, comes into it with the culture piece, then imagine what's possible in that organisation. and what a difference that would make to the lives of the people that are showing up and putting in their effort and working for you. Amazing. Just think about that for a minute. And there are small changes you can make. I always talk about making small changes, ridiculously small steps, you'll have heard me say before you get to the piece over here that's really massive and feels too big to take that leap to get to in one go. So you can all make small changes. And let's be clear here, it is everybody's responsibility to contribute to a positive and supportive workplace culture. Now, yes, you could argue it has to come from top down, and it absolutely does as well, but we all have a role to play in that as leaders. So yeah, some really fascinating stuff in there. And then we were talking about getting promoted, that whole piece around career planning. I remember way back to one of the first few episodes, where we had Jodie Salt on with us. She was talking about her career being a series of I can't remember the exact words she used, but happy accidents, things like that, where you're just in the right place at the right time. You hadn't planned it out, but actually you ended up taking that move, taking that promotion, whatever it was, and it took you off in a different direction that you hadn't actually planned for. So it is really interesting, isn't it? Because that's happened an awful lot in my career. And when I say that, I'm really in my fourth and I hope final career over the years, because I've done all sorts of different things, because A, I've wanted it and gone for it, but B, people have seen something and given me a chance as well, but it takes two to tango, as they say. So you're kind of feeling your way as you go. And I certainly didn't plan back in my 20s that I'd be a leadership coach at the age I am now. I had no idea this was going to be what I'd be doing, but I'm so pleased that I am, and I'm so pleased that I've got all the skills that I've been able to build up over the years to contribute to the leadership coach that I am today. It makes me much stronger in what I do and much more equipped to help support the leaders that I support with the complexities that they're facing in their organisations and what they do. And thinking about that sort of promotion piece, we used a term with Tom saying that when we get promoted, a lot of people sort of, in a way, make the mistake that they think they've suddenly got to become these super doers at that level, because they were used to doing everything here, taking action and doing, like down in the weeds of the detail is an expression I used this week for something. When you take a step up and you start leading that group, that's when you've got to start thinking more strategically and doing things differently. What's not expected is to be doing more of this stuff down in the weeds, because that's not going to be helpful, and it's not going to help you to concentrate on leading all of the people down here in the weeds where they need to be to make everything function as it should, but you don't need to be down in there. So it's that ability to take a step up because you've been promoted, and then being able to see that bigger picture and change your own behaviours as a leader to be able to lead the team, allow them to do the super doing, or the doing as they are, and you become super at doing other things. That's the important definition there, or distinction rather. You're doing other things. You're looking at the whole piece and not just getting drawn down into one thing where there's lots of detail. So, we were chatting about that and how interesting it is and how difficult, really difficult that can be. And I know I've been a little bit guilty of making that mistake in the past. It's hard. And how else do you learn? We talk about this growth mindset, and this came up with Nathalie and Becky as well, in terms of being able to understand that you've tried something, it didn't work. What did I learn from that? And being able to take those learnings and try it again, adjusting the goal or whatever it is that you're going for, and being able to then say, right, that didn't work. These few things kind of worked. If we tweak it a little bit here and there, that's really going to help us to get to where we want to be and achieve the things that we want to achieve. So it was really, really interesting that always seems to come up as a theme whenever I'm chatting to people about their experiences with leadership. And as I said, Tom, Nathalie and Becky all come from very, very different backgrounds and have had extremely different experiences in their leadership journeys to where they are today. And a lot of that piece around us being so busy in such complex environments, because our world is very complex now, especially now that many of us are working in a much more hybrid environment post-pandemic. Some of us have been drawn back into the workplace utterly because organisations really want people to be in the office. Some are really seeing the benefit of people working remotely, but also supporting that need for people to have human connection and introducing that hybrid piece. And I have to say, it warms my heart that I'm seeing that a lot more now with organisations as they're recruiting post-pandemic to think about that hybrid piece and how supportive that can be, to people's well-being in terms of their, if you want to call it, work-life balance, but really it's about helping people to uphold their own boundaries of self-care by working from home 2, maybe 3 days a week, and then the other 2-3 days a week working in the office, getting that human interaction, getting those quick moments in the kitchen or behind you. Oh, can I just ask you about such and such that's just come up? What do you think? Because it's so much harder to do that when you're online. But there are so many easy ways to do that. And I often send the colleagues that I work with a quick note to say, have you got a minute to chat about X? And it really works well. And I'm pleased to say they do the same to me. Have you got a few minutes to talk about such and such? And then we do a quick Teams call, and it's as if we met in the kitchen to have a chat. And I think it's being using the tools that we've got and having the confidence to just reach out to people like that to make sure you keep those connections going and you get that help and support. Because I always say 2, 3, 4 brains are much better than just mine when I'm trying to work through a problem or bounce an idea or think about a complicated message that I'm trying to get across. I often have a quick bounce with somebody just to say, how is this messaging landing with you? Can you suggest a tweak or does that make total sense? And that only takes 5 minutes to go through it, have a quick chat, tweak anything, and then be able to send the message knowing that it's going to land well. So I often find that really helpful as well. What else do we talk about? Oh, yes, seeing greatness in others and helping others to develop. So far I've kind of talked about our own careers and how we're developing ourselves and how we step up from the doers to the strategic doers, not the super doers of the doers, if that makes sense. So it really is important to help support the teams that we have around us. That's all part of leadership. And I love nothing more than seeing one of my team develop and go off and fly the nest to do something else. Yes, it's really, really a sort of balance between you feeling like, oh no, if they leave, I'm going to have to recruit and it's more effort to retrain somebody new. But ingrained in me. I could never hold a team member back if they're looking to develop and have that appetite for more and different and learning, to go off and do something else because of the foundation that we help to give them in our team. And I've experienced that an awful lot over the years, where people have developed in the teams that I've been part of, and then they've gone off to do other things, and it really is incredible to see. And if you've built good relationships where there's a lot of trust in there, then you'll never lose those connections. And who knows, you may cross paths again in another team later on in the future. And I have had that happen once or twice as well, where we've gone different ways and then come back again and then gone off on different ways again. So it is interesting how that can work. But it is so, well, for me, I feel it's such a privilege to recognise that greatness in others, be able to give them the opportunity to do something new, whether it's a special project in the team that I'm part of, or whether it's something outside. When you're having those development discussions, really dig in. What are they interested in? What makes them excited? Why do they get out of bed in the morning? Let's bring it back to purpose. I love to talk about purpose. This is what I help people do, is connect with their purpose, connect with their why. Connect with why are they getting out of bed in the morning? What's bringing them joy? What can they get more of that they're passionate about in the job that they do day to day? So, it always comes back to purpose with me. So, when I'm helping develop people, that's what I love to kind of get underneath and help them think about when they're thinking about their own development and what might be coming next for them in another team. Or sometimes that means that they might want to leave the organisation. That's okay. We all grow and develop, and sometimes we outgrow the place that we're in and we really want something different. So we have to be, as leaders, we have to be prepared that might mean that they leave, fly the nest, the organisation completely. Gosh, what else did we have? The things that define us. What are our defining qualities, our strengths, that somebody would say, oh, do you know Paula Eddy? Well, yes, I do. What do you think of her? Well, what's that positive gossip that somebody is saying about me? Well, let's hope it's something like, oh, Paula's the one that helps people develop and grow and connect their purpose. Wouldn't that be fantastic if that's what they're saying about me? So it really is important to have a think about what really defines you. And I talk about the and I can't remember if I've talked about it with the three here, but it just springs to mind now, is the pie model in terms of career success. How much time do we spend thinking about and doing things about, taking action on rather, thinking about and taking action on our performance, our image and our exposure within the organisation. Now, performance, of course, is a given, because if we don't perform, we're not going to have a job anymore, are we? But your image, so that was what I was just talking about, actually, your personal brand. How do you want people to talk about you when you're not in the room? So that positive gossip. So yeah, I'm a go-getter. I take action, so an action taker, and I connect people with their purpose. That's probably what people may well say about me if I'm not in the room, and that's what I would hope I'm projecting to others. But think about that for yourselves. Think about it in terms of really good words you can use, like connector or collaborator or action taker. Disruptors, another good one. positive disruptor, I would say, rather than negative disruptor. Things like that really are making an impact. And then we talked about the softer side of leadership as well, and this definitely came up with Nathalie and Becky. Those skills that you really definitely have as part of your ingrained personality, but that you can also learn to utilize more when they're often hidden. So again, maybe you've been in a culture where you couldn't allow your empathy to show, you couldn't allow your kindness to show, because it wasn't the done thing in that team, because it was very hard-nosed, very targets focused, and just generally, for me anyway, it would be unpleasant to be in that kind of culture. So we were talking about, if you could be anything, be kind, and be empathetic to your colleagues' situation and what people are going through. All of these things are going to help you to be the best leader you can be, your best version of you, as you come into work day to day. But I guess we do think of leading ourselves traditionally in the workplace, but I've often said this about purpose. Once you connect with your purpose, it supports you in your personal and your professional life, because you can't unknow what your purpose is, and it really starts to help direct, or inform rather, the decisions that you make as you move forwards, whether that's personally or professionally. And I think being able to have those soft skills that help you to be a better person, again, comes into your personal and your professional life, because that will encourage others to want to work with you, because they know that you're supportive, they know you care, and this will make a big difference in your leadership. And then we obviously with all of our guests, we talk about the games and the game episode, and lots of thoughts really on how game and leadership in the same sentence really feel a bit icky. It makes people uncomfortable. And when I thought about the concept for this podcast, I knew that was going to be the case for some people, because actually that's definitely the case for me. That whole sort of playing a game, seeing where I can get to, regardless of anybody else that's in my way, is something that just doesn't sit well with me. Never has, never will. For me, it's all about, and I think Becky used this term, and I know one of my previous guests who doesn't spring to mind just now, so apologies, but it's that game of chess. It's moving the parts to play to everybody's strengths, that then plays to the strength of the team all together, to help you achieve much more. The sum of its parts are greater than the whole, if that makes sense, for a team, and so true in many walks of life, of course. But being able to play that game, if you like, where you're using, or rather you're understanding strengths of everybody and helping them to use their strengths to support that greater piece for the team, is really helpful. And then I think the other piece, or the last piece I'm going to share with you today, that really resonated with me, and this comes up again quite a little bit, is the ripple effect. What one thing can you take, if it's from today's episode of what resonates with you, that's great. One thing that you can change in your leadership that's going to have a ripple effect on those around you. Now, is it that one act of kindness? is it that giving somebody a chance to do a project that then has the ripple effect of them going much further in their career in a direction that they wouldn't have otherwise had the opportunity to do? That act of kindness then may knock on because somebody will want to be kind to somebody else and kind to somebody else and so on. There's so many things to think about in there, but the ripple effect is very, very powerful. And don't underestimate the power of all the little things that you do every day, positive and unfortunately negative, that have that knock-on ripple effect to other people's days, lives, and the teams and the organisations that you work within. So I have to say, there's a huge amount of food for thought in today's episode, taking everything we've talked about in the last 9 episodes a little bit further in terms of my thoughts and what's resonated with me, and lots of themes there for you to think about. So with that, I wish you a wonderful rest of day and a great week ahead. And I will see you when you tune in for episode 61 next week. This has been Game of Leadership. I'm Paula Eddy-Wilcox, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddy-Wilcox, and it's been my pleasure to share what's resonated most for me over the past 9 episodes with our fantastic 3 guests. What now do you want to take away and help change or influence the way you lead moving forwards? There's been so much in there that I've shared today, and so much that we could dig into deeper. So if you want to know more, please do reach out and get in touch. I'd love to have a chat. But for now, I look forward to speaking with you next week on Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. Take care.